I'm here with Eric McAfee. We're going to ask him a few questions based on his company that he has. So why is the RFS critical advancing the bioeconomy? How is it?
The Renewable Fuel Standard is the federal government's establishment of increasing market size for a whole different set of renewable products that prior to the Renewable Fuel Standard, frankly, were all dominated by the oil industry. And specifically, the oil industry owns over 95% of the fueling stations in the United States. So without a federal law that allows access to that fueling infrastructure by renewable fuels, you could make a very inexpensive, competitive product and never be able to sell it. So the federal government in 2005 passed Renewable Fuel Standard 1, and then 2007 was RFS 2. And the goals of the program was to set forth a 15-year pattern all the way to 2022 of an annually increasing demand for jet fuel, renewable diesel, ethanol, all sorts of different products. And it has been a very successful policy in achieving the number one goal, which is attracting investor interest by providing a reliable policy. And it's been challenged recently as it's been very successful at displacing petroleum diesel and petroleum gasoline products, and it's gotten the attention of the oil industry, which has caused political uncertainty. But the law itself has been unchanged for since 2007. So it's a very stable policy. It just needs now to be enforced fully.
And so while we're talking about the advancements of the RFS, you talk about Midwest being an energy disruptor. How do you think St. Louis plays a role in it? Do you think we have progressed?
Well, St. Louis, as you know, is the home of some of the leading companies in the agricultural economy. And if I recall correctly, within about 500 miles of St. Louis, almost half of the corn in the country is grown. And certainly from a technology perspective, its footprint is national and international with seed and fertilizer and pesticide, different technologies. So the opportunity is to expand that into bioproducts, in that bioproducts are the foundation of this biofuels and renewable fuels industry. So we need higher yields of products that generate, for example, sugars. The starch in the corn kernel is what is made into ethanol in corn ethanol plants. So if you have a higher level of starch, or it's easier to extract the starch, that increases the economics of the biofuels industry. And then a really obvious one is that over the last 60 years, the average increase in yield in the corn grain industry is about 1% per year, 0.9% per year. So all of the metabolic pathway improvements and other genetic improvements that go into having higher yield per acre of grains obviously directly impacts the farmer. Now they have better economics, but it provides expanding feedstock without expanding the number of acres grown. So with roughly 90 million acres of corn, for example, in the United States, if you're increasing at 1% a year, that's almost 1 million acres of new production, but with only 90 million acres of farmland. So to increase the yield per acre is the core of growing the bioeconomy. And I think that St. Louis and the surrounding academic and research and development enterprises are at the center of that worldwide. I mean, you don't go far from St. Louis before you're missing out on a lot of that key R&D capability.
Yes, exactly. And so why do you believe places like NSERC are important to advancing the bioeconomy?
NSERC is unusual because even in its name, it admits to being interested in corn, the National Corn Ethanol Research Council. So we see that with a 17 billion gallon capacity ethanol industry in the United States, using corn as its primary feedstock, there is a tremendous technology opportunity in taking the non-corn components of the corn plant, specifically the corn stalk, the corn leaves, corn branches, corn cob, and being able to use the sugars or even potentially all the hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen material in that cellulose. The sugars themselves are cellulosic sugars, which means cellulosic ethanol. But if you use a different process that causes that biomass to be broken down into its associated molecules and then put them back together again, you end up with cellulosic ethanol, but you're actually using all of the different components that even are not sugar.
Right.
And so the technology opportunity at NSERC includes both those opportunities. How do we extract the C6 and C5 sugars? And also, how do we maybe use the entire biomass in making ethanol? Like our plant in California uses all the woody biomass from trees. You can actually feed corn stover into our process and make cellulosic ethanol. And so NSERC, I think, plays a central role in the technology development, the pilot scale demonstration, attracting then financial support. And with financial support, interestingly, the regulators and even the politicians start seeing that certain things are possible, and that drives further regulatory support and further financial support. But without that original kernel of research and development being demonstrated, that's the key. You can always study it in a book, but until you can walk in and say, well, we actually did it in this pilot facility, it's hard to get the traction in the financial and regulatory and political environments.
Right. Okay. And just one last question. Do you have any advice for pursuing people that would like to get a career in the bioeconomy field?
Yeah. Start out as a reporter for BioWire. I'm not joking. I think that's obviously terrific. Yeah. One of the best ways to do it actually is to find a way to get into environments like this conference, for example, where you have a broad array of people involved in the economy.
Right.
It's very easy to see that maybe you should be a scientist, and if you're a scientist, then you could get a job in the laboratory. But to tell you the truth, the best use of a scientist's expertise would be to go into finance or into regulations. And California, you have the California Air Resources Board, staffed with lots of scientists. But what they're doing is they're using their science capabilities to develop the regulations that support this industry. And then, frankly, you spend a little time there, and before you know it, you're very valuable to industry. They'd love to have somebody that understands and can influence regulation. So I would encourage people to think about their opportunities as being a lot broader than what you could perceive as, I'm a scientist, therefore I have to do science.
Exactly.
And same goes with the other side of it. I'm a business person, therefore I have to be a business. Not so much. Maybe you should be working in the regulatory or even the political environment.
Right.
Go work on somebody's campaign, but be focused on how you can grow renewable fuels, renewable chemicals. So I especially encourage people to not limit their education. Go get an MBA.
Yeah.
Go get a master's in some science thing. If you already have a bachelor's in accounting, terrific. Go get a master's in biology. Because it's that diversity of thinking that allows people to then add a lot of value. It's when they have a really narrow approach, and that's when they kind of are self-limiting their opportunities.
Well, I thank you so much for your time and giving us a chance to be able to interview you. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.